Good morning. Thank you, Anakita, for the introduction. Thank you again to the Beverage Trade Network for allowing Ciotti Company to speak. This is 4 years that you've given us the opportunity to present what's going on globally around the world and domestically with the bulk wine industry. My name is Todd Azevedo. I'm with the Ciotti Company, and those of you who are not familiar with the Ciotti Company, we have 10 offices around the world. We are dedicated to the bulk wine and trade fair with offices and dedicated brokers in each one of these things for international importing, exporting, and all your domestic business inside these individual countries and around the world. So today, I had a choice of a handful of headlines just to get it started, and I know we don't want to lean too far to the negative side of it, but we had a couple of choices of quotes that I used. So this is one from Woody Allen, because I think he's a pretty funny guy. The other one I was going to use from Woody Allen was, I don't have a positive message, but would you take 2 negative messages to make a thing? And also, I thought at one point in time, maybe Kenny Rogers and the Gambler and say, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, is one of those things. But, more than any time in history, mankind faces a crossroad. One path leads to despair and utter hopelessness, the other, extinction. Let us pray. We do wisdom of choices. And this, this subject and what we're going to talk about today is a little bit of painting with a broad brush. There's a lot of nuances in some of these markets. So, obviously there's a lot of Ciotti gentlemen here and ladies that will help you out with some of your individual questions later on. But as we get into some of what is happening around the world and the recent headlines, some of the stuff that we have to battle against, especially on the wine industry side of it, is a lot of negative connotation about what is happening, rather it be pricing, rather it be inventory, rather it be lack of sales, rather it be troubles with vineyards and harvesting and everything that goes along. But I think the main thing that worries me, and we talk about in our office a lot here at Ciotti, is irrelevance. And irrelevance is something that is incapable of, we cannot afford to have happen to us. And it doesn't just happen with younger people, but it happens with cultures and it happens with timing. Irrelevance is something we have to avoid as a wine industry. So some of these things, whether it be these headlines that you see listed up here right now, I concern myself with more of the wine industry being irrelevant. Looking at just production, we're in a time and place in this wine industry right now. We're in a rebalance period. We're trying to figure out what we need, how we're going to sell it, what we're going to sell. And these are some of the numbers that have happened out of the OIV over the last year of just what you see as a global trend. And just take a retrospective of what it looks like and what we're trying to do. Same thing's happening in the Northern Hemisphere as well, as we're trying to rebalance inventories and try and figure out what we need, how much we need to sell to our customers and to the open public. Consumption is something we find to be a challenging thing, rather it be the lack of, or the decline of sales and consumption over the last 12 years. We see that the lack of consumption here in the United States, the European market especially declining, negative connotations around alcohol and like zero tolerance in drinking. The industry, especially domestically here in the United States, we've hung our hat on a healthier alternative to spirits. That's a 35-year running agenda that we've set out there. We have to reinvent ourselves. We have to continue to evolve in this wine industry and start to change things. Because like I said, nothing will ever stay the same. It doesn't matter what it is, especially in this industry, everything will continue to change. As we go around, take a look, just a quick snapshot of what's happening around the world in these different countries. And we start to look at the Southern Hemisphere and Chile. A common thread you'll see in a lot of these countries is the white wine world is doing fairly well in sales-wise and demand. And red wine is a little bit lacking, a little bit behind in terms of where we would like to see it or the expectations of seeing it. And Chile right now, along with the rest of the Southern Hemisphere, there is a change, trying to pull out some vines for rebalancing, still seeing some good activity when it comes to exports. It is a country that a lot of people go to for sourcing and for price purposes as well. And then we start to think about what is lingering around. Some of the negative things that are happening, again, is the red wine. And it's surprising to see that Pinot Noir has been reduced internationally. But recently, we've seen some better sales happening. A year ago, we were sitting in this room, and there was a lot of Australians worried about their marketplace and what was happening with the Chinese market. With the trade opening up and the tariffs lowering a little bit, it's happening. Its sales are going forward. At the Ciotti Company, we worry ourselves of just follow through and what ends up happening 12, 24 months down the road. Argentina is one of those, it's a question mark, as I list up here on some of the sayings or some of the bullet points about stabilizing prices and an uptick in some of the sales that are happening in Europe. Some of that was based upon the fact of a lower harvest that would happen in Argentina. But the government, the devaluing of the peso, expectations of softening in pricings are something that concerns everybody when we start to think about the Argentinian wine market. It's a challenge. New Zealand ends up being one of those countries, a little bit of a one-trick pony. A year ago, we were talking about high pricing, some of the highest prices we've ever seen in New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. Now we've done a 180, gone the other direction, seen some of the lowest pricing in 20 years in Sauvignon Blanc. Some of that, or most of that, honestly, has been on the older vintages. So we've seen some vintage backup when we talk about New Zealand. South Africa is a country where, basically, the best way to describe it is the local demand and the domestic demand for South Africa has helped it out tremendously. Even though a lot of people still go there for sourcing of white wines, the red wine portion of South Africa has been really taken care of by the domestic demand there. As we move over into the Northern Hemisphere, a couple bullet points of what's going on, especially like in Italy. I think this is, I know for all the 4 years that I've been up here presenting this program, the Prosecco and Pinot Grigio is something that they do right. It's something that the industry and the public consume a lot of, and so they continue to be very successful in that range. Spain is one of those countries, again, that we look at overall and traditionally as a very price competitive market in Europe, and they always seem to be able to provide for a lot of those different other European countries that fall short, whether it be of a harvest or because of pricing purposes. In France, I think that they're discovering at this point in time they need to get more competitive. You're starting to see some softening of prices, especially in some of your southern parts of France, and even some of the older vintages that you're seeing lingering around in some of the higher end areas of France. Going over to California, which obviously a lot of people here, just to give some idea of what is happening out there on the California market. This is a slide we use a lot just to give an idea of where inventories are. A year ago, if you go back to 2023, we were a little bit less, about 15%, 18% less than what it is in this July in 2024. As you'll probably mention more or talk a little bit more about, a lot of that is because we start to see traditional buyers being a net seller into this market, so we're not seeing as much movement happening around. So you see a little bit more inventory showing up on the Ciotti bulk inventories at this point. The California bulk market over the last 12, if not 18 months, has been fairly subdued. Small volume movements, decent to lower pricing as we've seen. Some of the I guess popular markets, I should say, over the last 12 to 24 months has been Cabernet, Napa Whites, Russian River, Pinot, and Chardonnay. But if you start to look at, especially some of the interior of California, the San Joaquin Valley area of it, much slower sales-wise and movement and volume at this point in time. A lot of things that we're realizing from clientele that we talk to them a lot about is this just-in-time buying, this opportunity to maximize cash flow, minimize debt, a lot of the things that businesses are trying to accomplish in a down market that we're looking at. Expectations are that as we get towards harvest here in California, we're going to see more lower prices. We're going to see hopefully some more movement, some emptying of tanks, and some moving forward and looking towards the future instead of looking at some of the problems we've had in the past. So price is not much of a motivator at this point in time. We don't have a magic wand to wave over any of these products just to make them move away, but we're expecting it to happen, and we're expecting it to see more activity as we get closer to harvest. So this is pointing out just some of the areas that we've neglected maybe, or that we've dropped off in recently, is the U.S. export market. As you can go through some of those numbers, a lot of down numbers. I think the one you point out is our annual export sales have dropped approximately 200,000 tons in the last 10 years, and that will continue to go on. California is a very expensive place to operate. California wines are very expensive comparatively to the rest of the world. And as an industry, it's a challenge. We need not to stick our head in the sand, but we need to do more. And we need to understand where we're coming from, not dwell on it, but move forward and make sure that we just don't ignore what has happened, but move into the future. Globally, supply is something I keep on talking about, is rebalancing, not dwelling on the past, dealing with these negative health messages, rebalancing of vineyards and supply, consumption, whether we talk about China or here domestically or even Europe, is all things that we have to recognize. Again, I think more of it ends up being it's not sticking our head in the sand and sweeping it under the rug. Deal with what we have in front of us, deal with the present, not dwell on the past, is a lot of the conversation I think that globally we have. Southern hemisphere-wise, if just to take a step back one, is that we've seen their turn in the market a little bit recently, especially over the last 18 months. And we hope that here in the northern hemisphere, we start to feel those factors start to take place. And I think we are. I think it is happening. We just need to realize some more deals and clean up some more of this inventory that exists. Observations about the California market as we move closer towards harvest here. The 23 crop was a little over-expected. Again, we didn't pick everything that was probably out there. And I think the 24 crop, because of the vineyards that are being ripped out and are being pulled, we'll see a better rebalancing and moving through some of these past inventories. Confidence in the California industry is a little, it's teetering right now. It's not the most, we're at the highest point for sure. I think everybody in this room knows that. So sales challenges we need to address, and hopefully if we see some flatter sales numbers, and especially if we move into the end of this year, the October, November, December things, hopefully we can reduce some of that fear and gain some more confidence. And financially, that'll also help out if we can see some, in the inflation numbers going down a little bit. People are going to buy grapes. They can't sit around and not have anything to sell. It's hard to sell from an empty cart, as some people would say. And we continue to think about it, nothing's going to change. There's a possibility that it could get worse, but what we're seeing and how we're feeling in our office at Ciotti is that we're trending in the right direction. So feeling a little bit better. I just put this slide in here. This is one of those things, we talk about what is in front of us right now and the challenges that we're dealing with currently in the marketplace. And there's some things we just don't talk about, and we just we do ignore at this point in time. But, this is a tax factor, and, that debt to GDP ratio currently is 117%. And yet our tax rates remain at the same, some of the lowest levels that they've ever been in a lifetime. So we got problems now. There's other problems that we're not dealing with at this point in time. So just realize as we move forward. And if I could leave it on some note of some positivity, here's things. I just got back from a 7-day baseball trip with a bunch of 14-year-olds. And, I use a lot of these same sayings to them as I look at some of the dads out here that do coach baseball in other arenas. And the one that I didn't leave up here is the one that I say to my son. I say to a lot of these kids after they strike out, it's like, next pitch. We're moving on. Same thing with the wine industry. Next vintage. We're moving on. We're looking forward to getting there. Don't look back. Forget about it. Let's get going. So, thank you.